Hello, and welcome to the first episode of Bad Movie Reviews. I'm your host, Jack, and today I would like to talk to you about one of the quintessential 80s B movies, Sorority Babes and the Slimeball Bowl-O-Rama. It's a classic, of course, for many reasons, primarily because it's awesome. If you're a bad movie fan and you don't have this in your collection, something wrong with you. So you need to get it because it's freaking awesome. Let's go over it real quick. The Tri Delta sorority has decided to initiate two new members. Well, we only ever see three members of the sorority to begin with, so it's kind of weird. I don't know if they're like supposed to be the hierarchy or what, but we're introduced to Babs, Frankie, and Rhonda. They're going to initiate Taffy and Lisa. Yeah, her name's Taffy, into the sorority. And that, of course, begins with a firm spanking for some reason or other. It's never quite made clear. But then, the party is crashed by a couple of nerds. A few, sorry. Jimmy, Calvin, and Keith. They're stereotypical 80s nerds. You got Calvin, who's the drunk off of one beer and wears glasses and is real dorky. There's Keith, who's real dorky, but for some reason is really muscular. And Jimmy, who's like the drunken fat guy, stereotype that seemed to be pervasive in the 80s. Well, they go to the girls decide that the initiation hasn't gone far enough. So they send Lisa and Taffy with the three boys to the local bowling alley to steal a trophy. And they're going to watch it all from the surveillance because Babs' dad owns the mall, conveniently. Alright, so they get to the bowling alley, but the door's open for some reason. And then that's when they go in to discover Spider is robbing the place, played by Lena Quigley. Now, of course, she's the tough bad girl type. Wears a lot of like leather straps and tight leggings because that's empowering in the 1980s. But the trophy they decide to steal, because they just go kind of ignore each other for some reason. Like, hey, this lady's robbing the place and we're breaking in to steal a trophy. Let's just ignore each other and have some witty banter. That seems to be how these things work. Honor among thieves or some such. So, Jimmy, our rotund compadre, decides to pick a trophy for the girls, and he picks the biggest one there. And a few moments later, it gets dropped in a heated exchange between him and Lisa, and it breaks open, and of course, there's a demonic imp inside. Well, the imp has to wreak havoc on everything, and he zombifies, demonizes Rhonda and what's her name, Frankie. So one of them looks like the Bride of Bride of Frankenstein from the old movie, and the other one just looks like she has really bad acne. The makeup effects are pretty weak. And everything kind of goes to hell from there. People start dying like crazy. One of them gets his head put in the fryer. The first kill, it gets his head put in a jukebox and then chewed on a little bit before his head is used as a bowling ball, which they don't really show the results of that bowl. Like, I was curious if they got a strike or not, but they don't really address that. There's not a lot of actual bowling in this movie. There's one scene where there's a bowling ball used to hit a demon chick in the head, and that's really the extent of the bowling other than the head roll. And we don't really see the results of any of these rolls, come to think of it. It's very unprofessional to do that. If you're going to have a movie in a bowling alley, there should be some actual bowling. But only one bowling ball is used as a weapon, and one bowling pin is used as a weapon. So you would think they would use those things more, but they don't. They don't even really go into the mall too much either, even though it's connected, which I thought was a little weird, but I digress. Um, Now, this is not a family fare movie. I would not recommend this for the kids, as it were. And by kids, I mean the young ones, under 20 or so, because they're very immature at that age, very impressionable. And you don't want to give them the wrong idea of antiquated things like malls and bowling alleys. And so they think that it's all demons and 80s music. Um, Based on my tally, another reason would be, of course, that there are at least 3 sets of boobs, um, 2 rear end scenes, full on beaver action in at least 2 scenes, including a shower scene with Frankie Stevens, who plays Taffy. Um, and then there's another full on nude scene with the girl that played Lisa, who was one of the pledges, and I'm talking full frontal and backle. Is that what the appropriate term for nude backsides? I don't know. I'm sure there's a term for it. And there are 3 brief scenes of spankings, which could be very troubling because the girls weren't actually being naughty per se. So that could be abuse of some sort, but it's definitely not for the faint of heart. The obviously, like I said, it's not for the kids and the more sensitive people. It could be very triggering for the emotionally stunted or immature. But thankfully, we have a very empowered woman in the form of Spider to help kind of offset these stereotypes. She's very much an 80s tough girl. She's got the whole attitude and quips and doesn't need no man. So there is that. So there is some female empowerment to go along and offset these spankings and boobage that you see. So there is some fair and balanced efforts being put forth. So I guess this could be considered a feminist storyline, and it does pass the test of 2 women talking to each other that isn't about a main male character, because there really aren't any main male characters other than maybe Calvin, who's kind of inept and useless and suffers from Velma syndrome, where he loses his glasses all the time and is kind of useless. And he just kind of wanders around and has ideas but never actually does anything. But nonetheless, the overall plot of the movie may sound a little thin, but how many movies nowadays, including remakes, which there are so many of, actually take place in a bowling alley? I mean, bowling is no longer in the Olympics even, which is sad because that's athleticism at its finest. I mean, okay, I can't even say that sarcastically and make it sound funny. Yeah, it's just one of those movies that really kind of embraces everything about low-budget 80s movies. You got your pointless nudity that really doesn't further the plot, so to speak, but it's there to kind of tie it together and re-spark your interest. It makes you want to go, oh yeah, I am watching this. Mostly for the unshaven nature and the firm pertness of the plot. And overall, just my initial impressions, as it were, are that the movie really has a pretty decent plot, and some of the dialogue is incredibly bad, but some of it's pretty smart. The janitor's pretty funny. And the imp is pretty funny too, Uncle Impy. He's probably the best character in the best developed character in there. But yeah, it's one of those movies that if you like low budget films, you really need this one in your collection, because it really set the standard for a lot of B movies that came later. And I don't see any reason why you wouldn't have it. For an 80s movie, it's got all the charm of the 80s, a great 80s soundtrack. by a bunch of nobodies that you've never heard of because it's a low budget film. It's got the low budget cheese factor where some of the jokes are just so over the top bad you would think a trauma writer wrote it. And it's got a lot of nudity. In the spanking scene, you don't really see a lot of spanking in low budget films. So there's a certain amount of fetishizing going on here, which it's kind of pointless actually, but I guess that's what they do in sorority movies. I assumed there would have been pillow fights, but they didn't get that far because there was a demon imp trying to kill everyone. And of course, everybody just kind of glosses over certain logical problems that may arise, like reality and the fact that magic isn't real. But that's neither here nor there. It's suspension of disbelief. Yeah, overall, I'd give this one a must own because it was pretty freaking awesome. It's got a little something for everyone except the kids and hypersensitive crybabies. And people that like empowered women could find something here. And there's the incompetent man syndrome. It's kind of explainable in this one because the men are giant dorks. And like Calvin gets drunk off of one beer. And he throws up a lot through the whole movie. And they even make a joke about that. But yeah, the incompetent men are justifiable in this one, so the men can't get too upset about that. Overall, I'd give this one a definite must-own that every good B-movie fan should at least watch once. But I think you should own it, add it to your collection, cherish it forever. Try and get a poster of the box art, because the box art and the promo posters were actually really well done. Usually, my general rule is that you can tell a movie's low budget by the fact that it has art instead of a photo for the cover, and this holds up to that. But the art is actually pretty good. It's got a catchy looking theme. Scantily clad ladies. Shockingly, nobody got their head crushed in with a bowling ball in the movie, but it kind of implies that on the cover. And they do kind of imply one of the demon chicks got her head caved in by one, but you don't see it. It's off camera because I don't think they could afford the effects. But yeah, it's a must-have. Get a poster of it. Get a copy on DVD. Pretty sure it's probably on some streaming services too. I would try and get it on Blu-ray, but I don't know if it's available on Blu-ray. My copy's on DVD. I know it was out on VHS too. That's where I first saw it. So get a copy of them all. They're like, Pokemon. You gotta collect them all. So yeah, I'm rambling now, so I'm gonna sign off for this episode. But we'll be back in a little while to do another exciting B movie, and I'll give a bad review on it. Thanks for listening. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed this. If you didn't, well, fine, be like that.